Hello, friends. I'm Lear DeBessinet, Artistic Director of ENCORES at New York City Center, and welcome to the Love Life episode of Inside the Revival. Love Life was due to premiere at City Center in March of 2020. Well, on March 12th, our final day in the rehearsal room, we got the news that Broadway was shutting down and New York City Center was shutting down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While the production had to be postponed, we look forward to the day it will be on our stages again soon.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
You guys know so much about Love Life. You're going to have all these facts memorized.
I love it.
Love Life is a one and only collaboration between Kurt Weill and Alan J. Lerner. It's basically the entire history of the United States of America in a musical told through the eyes of the Cooper family. So it starts in 1791 and goes to present day. Alongside the story of the Cooper family are vaudeville numbers that Weill and Lerner wrote to interrupt the story about the Coopers. They depict different aspects of American life and kind of debunk what we know today as the American dream. I consider it to be a social satire, and it's considered by many to be the first concept musical.
I had lunch with Hal Prince at one point, and when I mentioned Love Life, he sort of lit up. He said, Love Life is probably the most influential show I saw as a young person. And then I thought, well, Company, Follies, Cabaret, they certainly use a lot of the techniques that Love Life innovated.
Now Cora had a husband named Seven Day. She left him for a guy who made it that day. Economics, that's good. Economics, that's good. Economics, an awful bad for love.
What these writers had in mind was supremely ambitious.
This show has a lot on its mind and a lot in its heart and a lot of challenges in terms of how to present it.
It's a lot of complicated music, really wonderful Kurt Weill versions of great American styles of music.
So Weill created a kind of time-traveling score, and it grows more high pressure and sometimes more cynical as times change. His music keeps morphing. And so we were carrying it on our shoulders from 1948 all the way to 2020 and maybe didn't even quite know it.
The original production ran maybe 6 months. There was no cast recording because of a musician strike at the time. This is a title of a show that has had a lot of curiosity over the years by musical theater fans and historians.
We were on a mission to rescue this show from an obscurity that it didn't deserve.
This show, in my years at Encore, is definitely one of the hardest to crack. The original production had 50 people, and we have a cast of 30, and it's very specific requirements. The show involves magic tricks. They saw someone in half. There's a tightrope act. There's all these elements in the script that always felt a little daunting to tackle.
The main difficulty for me when I became artistic director was that I was always mentioning it and always waiting for a director to light up and say, yes, and I know how to do it. When I sat down with Vicki Clark and asked her what she'd like to direct, she said, Love Life, and I know how to do it.
Nothing like picking the hardest piece ever done by Encores as your directorial debut.
And I said, you're hired. I had no idea what her plan would be, but I had the faith that she would have one.
I have to say that the collaboration between Jack and Rob and myself and our wonderful choreographer, Joanne Hunter, was so joyful, was so much fun. It was like solving a giant puzzle. Samuel and Susan Cooper were the prototypical American couple, and they have 2 children, Johnny and Elizabeth. And it's the story of this family going through time, going through all of American history.
But I know well they're wrong, and I know where I belong, and here I'll stay with you.
Here I'll Stay is the first duet for Samuel and Susan Cooper. It's the peak of their love story. So In this show, right, the marriage starts really solid, and you see how good their communication is, how linked they are as a couple in purpose and in vision.
And the world others woo, I can find loving you, and so here I'll stand.
Their marriage falls apart as American history progresses.
It gets harder and harder to cope with American life, as it becomes more and more high pressure. So Samuel Cooper goes from being a craftsman who makes things that he's proud of to being a man who sells things. And eventually he'll sell practically anything.
And so one of the great questions of the piece is, can they save their marriage?
I could like to say that I'm happily divorced, which is sort of, doesn't really make sense to a lot of people, but I know that the kids are always in the crossfire, and I wanted to focus on the children. I wanted to focus on Johnny and Elizabeth Cooper and somehow find a way to tell the story of love life through the lens of the children, having the show be their idea, that it was sort of like an intervention for their parents in some way, of bringing them together into the theater and somehow helping explain to them what had happened in their marriage.
And essentially, without saying so, they say to their parents, we're going to tell you how this happened because you don't seem to know this is how you got to where you are today. And then the vaudeville numbers begin to make sense because they describe the pressure, the American pressure on this couple.
And as Americans, how do we put together our dream of what it is to be a family and live in the American dream and move forward with these expectations of what it means to be successful? We were the most lucky creative team in the world. We were able to go to Brian Stokes Mitchell and Kate Baldwin for Samuel and Susan Cooper. And they brought such skill and wit and humor to these roles and made them so human. They made them just jump off the page. And then our two children, one was African American and one was Caucasian. We had a real American family, like a contemporary American family. I kept saying to everyone, I want this to look like a subway car. I want to look up and down and see every kind of person from every background, every culture. I want it to feel so contemporary so that when people come to see the show, somewhere on the stage, they see themselves.
New York, Tennessee, Oregon, Maine, Wichita, Little Rock, Butte, and Spokane. I've seen them all, mister. I've heard their noisy hum. You know them all, mister, when you're a bum.
Love Song, to me, is almost the thesis statement of the show. It's a man who's been traveling. It's a man who is displaced. We assume that he's homeless and that he's been traveling across the country, and now he's going to tell us what he's learned.
I sing a song about the ocean, sing of how endless is the ocean, sing of how ever near the shore and sea. And that's how true love should ever be.
It's a warning. He's giving us a warning. And it's sort of the person with the least amount of power in our society, delivering this message to us.
Won't someone stop the wheels a moment? Let the smoke a second clear. Water down the furnace. That's the song you ought to hear. Oh, hear me, I only sing a love song. Hear me, I only sing a love song. Sing of how when it dies, the world turns gray. But nobody hears me what I say.
We went into rehearsal for Love Life, I guess, in late February or early March. And, COVID, I remember COVID was just the first few cases in New York had just been announced right around the beginning of March.
I remember Rob coming to me during a rehearsal break and saying, we might not get to do this show. And I was completely flabbergasted. I couldn't accept that this was the reality we were facing. The idea that the show might actually be postponed or canceled just seemed inconceivable to me.
So here we are, it's March 12th, trying to work out the finale, and I look up and Stokes is standing there. He said, Broadway shutting down tonight, and the enormity, I knew exactly, instantly what that meant for us. So I just kind of lost it. And then he said, but we're going to do the run through, right? And I was like, yeah.
There was this surrealistic moment during the lunch break that day. I remember standing in the marketing department with everyone and everyone saying, should we do this run through? I mean, we're not going to do the show. There's no real reason to do the run through. But of course, there was the best reason to do the run through, which is that all of us needed to do it for ourselves.
And then afterwards, Jack, you made another speech, which is one of the most, one of the things I won't forget about that afternoon. You said, I've never spent a more moving or fulfilling afternoon in a rehearsal studio in my life.
And that's true to this day. Of course, I haven't been back in a rehearsal studio since.
When audiences do finally get to see Love Life, I think they'll be delighted by the variety the show has to offer, such as this satirical 11 o'clock cabaret number for Susan.
He will be a perfect dream of manhood. He'll be everything and more a man should. Tender as a flower, he'll look like Tyrone Power. That's all I want of Mr. Right.
She's divorced. The marriage has come to an end. And she's actually talking about the real guy that she wants to meet, like the guy, not Sam, some other guy that will be everything she needs him to be and more.
And he won't mind if I spend all his earnings, long as I'm releasing all my yearnings. He will live for me, I will live for he, and we will live every night when I have found Mr. Right.
Mr. Right is its own vaudeville number. This is the only point in the show where Sam and Susan step into the vaudeville show. And it's very fitting that it's at the very end of the show. In the finale, they get sucked up into a vaudeville number.
He'll make not one mistake. He'll be solid good, just like I dreamed he always would. Not ever sweet or arty, but strong and Bogarty. One look and I will feel I'm in a cocktail shaker, for I'll know that I have met my maker. He'll have no match, so on him I'll latch the moment he is inside.